Thank you for being here. So my name is Bradley Metrock. I've been in San Francisco all week. The moment this is over, I'll be headed to the airport where I will wait until an 11 p.m. flight back to Nashville, Tennessee that'll arrive at 5:20 a.m. So it's been a good week out here as part of some stuff Samsung was doing and a lot of things. I'm honored to be here. The name of this talk, I think, is Finding the Right Voice Strategy for Your Mobile App. And we're certainly going to touch on that. We're going to talk a lot about that. But I view my primary objective for this talk to be sort of opening your eyes. My brother is a mobile developer. He's been a mobile app developer for about a decade, and so I've been able to see some of his successes and have a pretty good feel for some of the stuff that the mobile app developers go through, although I'm certainly not one, and you're going to see that in just a minute. So I'm CEO of a company called Score Publishing based in Nashville, Tennessee. And we're not a normal publisher. In fact, some might argue we're not a publisher at all. I don't view it that way. We have a podcast network called Voice First FM that we started 2.5 years ago. This is the podcast network for the new era of voice computing that we're in. We have a lot of different shows that we produce in-house and some that other people around the world produce. There's Alexa in Canada, which is out of Vancouver. Another show called Voice First Health is out of Vancouver. Voice Marketing is out of California. It's out in Los Angeles. VUX World is out of London. I personally host a show called This Week in Voice, which is our flagship show. At this point in time, Voice First FM is listened to across 56 countries by hundreds of thousands of people who are primarily technology professionals. This Week in Voice goes in seasons. Again, this is the show I host. Season 3 wrapped up last year, and Mark Cuban was my guest on the show. Season 4 is ongoing now, and Microsoft is our sponsor for it. I've become known somehow for talking about voice technology. This is an article I wrote, or the headline of an article I wrote for Harvard Business Review that's been well received. Top influencer, whatever that means. We produce a lot of events over the course of the year. We have something called the Voice First Events Series, which leads discourse in voice technology and the AI that sits underneath it. This event is our next one, the Voice of the Car Summit. It's all about voice technology in the modern connected car. That's actually in this neck of the woods, San Jose, about a month and a half. We do a major event called the Voice of Healthcare Summit, which is every year at Harvard Medical School. That is all about the growing intersection of voice technology with modern healthcare, which will shock you. We'll talk more about that. Digital Book World is a longstanding publishing industry event that we've added voice and AI to. That's in Nashville, Tennessee, in September. The Voice of Money is all about conversational AI and voice technology in modern banking and finance. We're doing 2 of those. We're doing one in New York City and one in London. That's later this year. And then the big one that we do, which we just did recently, is called Project Voice, which is the #1 event for voice technology and AI in America, coming the week after CES. Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Samsung, Mercedes-Benz. This had a lot of presenting sponsors that are companies you would know. So, again, my objective here is just to open your eyes. I think that for mobile developers, y'all are sort of a special breed where you're so laser focused on your particular app that, a lot of times it helps to see, maybe step back a little bit and get a bigger view, a more macro view on what's going on. And with this trend, with the adoption of voice, hopefully this will open your eyes to think about how you can implement this yourself. So the term is voice first, and this is what got me interested in voice technology. We've all lived through hype cycles of technology where somebody is saying, this is the next big thing, this is the next big thing, and then 4 or 5 years from now, oh, it's not the next big thing, we're not even talking about it anymore. The thing that's different about voice is that it's so innately human. When we're born, and even in our mother's womb, all we have is our mother's voice. Quickly, we gain an inner voice that will guide us for the rest of our life. And so it always stood to reason that as technology evolved, it would arc toward being voice-driven, voice-oriented, what we call voice first. This is a slide I'm going to spend quite a bit of time on. I'm going to load all of this up now. So if you don't take anything else away from this presentation, you hopefully will take away the concept that voice technology is not something that's going on. It's not an ivory tower sort of thing. It's not something 3 to 5 years out. There's incredible successes going on right now. And they get overshadowed by the conversation about data security and privacy. That conversation is never going to go away. But nevertheless, there's a lot of fantastic things going on. I'm going to go through this list because I feel like it'll be instructive as you sit there and think about the mobile app landscape, how some of these things may impact what it is you're doing and your strategy. So the first thing up there is Novel Effect. That is a company that was the first company to be accepted in Amazon's Alexa accelerator powered by Techstars. And they went on Shark Tank, where they got an offer for, I think it was like $500,000, which they declined, to then go on and raise $5.4 million immediately thereafter. So the deal with Novel Effect is that it is a voice-oriented technology and approach where it hears one human being reading a story to another human being. So I could be reading The Cat in the Hat to our 8-year-old son, and it would hear that, and it would know that I'm on chapter 4 as opposed to chapter 1, and it would sync up this audio soundscape, many of which are recorded in Nashville actually, sync up this audio soundscape to that live reading and create a new experience. Now, it sounds really gimmicky, and it kind of is gimmicky, but what they've discovered is that when you do that, children, and really human beings of any age, but particularly children who have been studied with this, reading comprehension goes way up. It explodes when this technology is used. And so that's when these guys knew they were onto something, and that's the basis of a lot of their subsequent development. Stephen King Library. This is, in my estimation, the closest we've gotten to implementation, meaningful implementation of AI in the publishing world. So Stephen King Library is a partnership, it's a collaboration between Simon & Schuster, Stephen King, and a New York-based agency called Skilled Creative. And what this does, it's an Alexa skill, skilled being the word for app in Amazon's nomenclature. It's also on Google. And it asks you, what's the most recent Stephen King book that you've read? Give an answer. And then it'll start asking you a lot of questions that seem to have nothing to do with any of the 50 to 60 books that Stephen King has written. And ultimately, after 5 or 10 questions, I forget, the number varies depending on how you answer, it will create a list of the top 2 or 3 Stephen King books that you should read in the estimation of this AI that you should read next. And furthermore, if you're on Alexa, I believe you can order them on the spot through the skill. This has been wildly successful for them, for everybody involved. It puts the agency that created it on the map. Stephen King's made a bunch of money off of it, and so has Simon & Schuster. So the next one up there is Alexa, what am I holding? And you'll see the theme of all these is that even despite the fact that voice technology is nearly ubiquitous, you know, everybody you know has got an Echo in their home, or they're real vocal about, I'm putting that in my house because I value my privacy, or whatever it is that they have to say. Either way, everybody's familiar with the technology. And yet, so many of these profound successes almost nobody knows about, and it certainly will change. Alexa, what am I holding? So, does anybody have an Echo Show or an Echo device that's got a front-facing camera? Okay, so there's one. I have one as well. So the Amazon devices, Alexa devices that have a front-facing camera, the Echo Show, Echo Spot, there's a couple of them. If you ask Alexa, what am I holding? And you're holding a product with a barcode, it will scan the barcode and tell you what you're holding. And if it's something that you can buy through Amazon, it'll ask you if that's something that interests you. If it's something that doesn't have a barcode, it'll sort of Shazam style try to use AI machine learning processes to figure out what you're holding. And that also sounds like a gimmick until you think about it for a minute. And people with no vision, low vision, various accessibility sort of challenges, this is completely transformative. And this has been a major reason why a good subset of people have bought the Echo Show, is for this particular thing. Alexa Guard. So Alexa Guard is a feature of Alexa that Google really doesn't have anything like this yet, but that'll change, where the best way to describe this is that it listens to your house or your office, and it establishes baseline levels of audio. So it will do things like, it'll hear your refrigerator, and it'll hear your refrigerator, and a lot of times it'll know what type of refrigerator you have because it's pretty much that good. It'll hear, okay, you go to the bathroom this many times during the day. On average, the door's open. There's activity from 7:15 a.m. to 9:22 p.m. on average. It'll start to create, accumulate context of that nature. And if it doesn't hear somebody moving around for 48 hours, if it doesn't hear any of that stuff that it established baseline levels for, you tell it, you establish what you want it to do. Contact authorities, contact a point of contact. For senior citizens living by themselves, this is a huge deal. But also, if it hears glass breaking, and this is where the insurance industry, where this has impacted the most, who this has impacted the most comes in. If it hears glass breaking, if it hears a number of things that it knows are unusual, it can trigger calling the police. So this is something that a lot of people just have no idea about. Like I said, that'll change. Really profound feature of the ecosystem. Google Recorder. So Google Recorder is I guess I'd call it a tool set that facilitates live transcription. The transcription part's not the important part. Live translation is the more important part without the cloud. So without any cloud, Google Recorder, which is now they've integrated it into Google Assistant, will transcribe and translate within a lot of different languages. I'm talking in true real time. And the fact that they're able to do that without the cloud has had a lot of implications for Google Assistant. It's opened up a lot of possibilities. Smart speakers and college freshmen and senior citizens. This is an interesting one. So certainly, as people in this room ought to know, technology has caused us to have lonely, depressed, and isolated lives almost more than ever before. But even with that, there's two types of people that are more lonely and isolated and depressed than anybody else: college freshmen and senior citizens. And these two types of people have something in common. They have a lot in common. Usually, they're moving into new environments. They see family rarely, if at all. They're seeking out a new identity, new sense of community, all those sorts of things. There have been multiple studies already, and they haven't really gotten to the root cause, but they've sort of identified the correlation between inserting smart speakers into college freshman dorm rooms or senior living facilities with senior citizens in them, and all sorts of positive outcomes. For college freshmen, more participatory in broad terms in the academic community they're in or at the college, attend class more often, make better grades, drop out less, and kill themselves less. Senior citizens, same sort of thing happens, except with one notable addition: better drug adherence. So senior citizens who have smart speakers in their room, with or without applications on the smart speaker that have anything to do with taking their prescription drug regimens, they adhere to them better than if they don't have it. And all the other same things apply as well. They are more participatory in the community that they're in. They're less depressed, and they live longer. The last one up there, speech pathology and Project Understood. So this is an educational aspect of voice technology and the AI that sort of sits underneath it that's worth knowing, just like all of these are. So Google has partnered with the Canadian Down Syndrome Society to create something called Project Understood. And one of the challenges with voice technology is that these smart speakers and voice assistants, if they're on mobile or wherever they are, they don't always understand you. Children, sometimes it's harder to understand. People with speech impediments, harder to understand. People with Down syndrome, really hard to understand. And so Project Understood is a machine learning process that Google and the Canadian Down Syndrome Society partnered on creating, to where tens of thousands of people with Down syndrome have been able to receive lists of sentences provided by Google, read them, and have them recorded, and Google ingests all that data. And as a result, even now, Google Assistant is better at measurably, significantly better at understanding the words from people who have the words from people who have Down syndrome than it was even 6 to 9 months ago. And if I can find where I put this, there's a pretty profound video about this, and I've included it here. I hope this plays. You gonna hit it, or do I need to hit it? There we go.
I gave my voice all kinds of things.
Like narrate a job interview.
Being a cute person at a bar.
Impress you with my karaoke skills.
But I can't use it.
To ask about the weather.
Hey, Bill, what's the forecast today?
Sorry, I don't understand.
Or call my mom when I need help. Hey Google.
Because right now,
Voice technology doesn't always understand people with Down syndrome.
or stop. Nobody likes to be misunderstood.
Or look harmed. I may sound different, but I still have a lot to say.
So we're partnering with Google.
So we can solve it together using our own voice.
The more voices we have,
the better the technology will get.
So we can create a future.
where every person with Down syndrome is understood.
We got this.
I'm teaching Google.
I am teaching Hugo
I'm teaching Google. Donate your voice.
at projectunderstood.ca.
Hey Google, thank you.
You're welcome.
It's kind of remarkable. So I've seen that video a whole lot of times. It doesn't stop not being moving. So it's important for you, working within the mobile application realm, doing whatever it is that you're doing, to understand the velocity of change of what's going on with voice technology right now. There was a statistic last year, and I'll talk through all of this in just a minute, but there was a statistic, it's like the first part of 2019 it came out, and I haven't heard it updated since, but it was that Amazon is hiring more people to work on Alexa than Google is hiring people. And I just assume it's still true. I really don't know. But it just speaks to the race that these companies are on to perfect all of this stuff, and for every little incremental change they can possibly squeeze out of this thing, they're going to find it. Because this is, how a lot of people interact with computers. So there's a term that gets thrown around a lot with people who work in this space called Generation V, which is a term describing children growing up today having the expectation that they're going to be able to speak to computers. And if they can't speak to computers, then they'll look for one where they can, or they'll try to find another experience. And so for anyone creating a mobile app, integration of voice into mobile apps is just now starting to sort of leave the station. And, all of this stuff is worth being cognizant of. I picked out a couple of realms where there's some great use cases of how voice has been implemented into a mobile app. Spotify went to the trouble, they've made multiple acquisitions of voice-oriented companies, voice and AI firms, to get to the point now where, who has Spotify in the room? Okay, so over half. There's a microphone there, and you can touch it and say, artist, album, song, and it finds it with, in my experience has been, it finds it with sort of remarkable precision. But also, and I tested this a few weeks ago, and I was surprised it actually works. You can also tell it things like next song or say a playlist, and it'll find that. I mean, everything you think it ought to be able to do, it can do. And so not everybody's going to be able to go out and acquire companies that help them integrate that. But they really have, the useful thing to know about that is that they've provided a great blueprint for how voice will ultimately work in every mobile app. It'll understand every sort of user interface sort of need that the user of your app will have. Healthcare's got a lot of people working on this. I just selected one whose technology I've seen recently called iScribe Health. They're based out of Nashville. And there's numerous issues in healthcare that require the aid of a voice layer. But what this iScribe Health does is it's a straight up app for doctors in notation that there's a gazillion of these. But iScribe Health has, not to bore you with it, but has a lot of little nuances that has sort of taken it to another level. And it's a good thing that so many companies are working on how to make doctors' lives easier. And voice is going to be part of that equation. Tools and libraries. So for mobile app developers who you've built a mobile app, and my brother's this way. He's built two big mobile apps that he, maintains right now. And there's a lot of interest on his part, and I've seen this with others, that to what's the easiest way, what's the path of least resistance to integrate voice into a mobile app. And both of these companies that are up here on the screen have technology that would let you do that. But this one, Spokestack, just to walk over here and point to it, for whatever reason I'm doing that. Spokestack they just announced themselves at Project Voice back in January, and they're based here in San Francisco, and they have really good libraries, as well as a pretty sophisticated tool set that will enable you, the mobile app developer, to integrate voice into your app pretty much more easily than it's ever been able to be done. Conversational AI is at the bottom. I feel like this is something that has to be mentioned. So everybody's familiar with the mainstream voice assistants, Alexa and Google Assistant and Cortana and Bixby and Siri. There's an interesting second tier of companies that most people have never heard of that are also working to create their own voice assistants and AI ecosystems. Most are hoping to get bought by somebody, and some already have. There's different plays going on. But SoundHound, that first one there, raised $100 million 18 months ago and has pretty much succeeded, if you look at the data, in creating a voice assistant that is just as powerful and robust as Alexa and Cortana. Not quite as good as Google Assistant in terms of how it responds with data and to queries, but every bit as good as Alexa and Cortana, and way better than Siri in terms of responding to a wide range of queries. Clink is noteworthy because literally just as I walked in the door, an article came out from The Verge about how their CEO has been removed for sexual harassment. So couldn't quite remove them from my slide deck, but you may want to remove them from your working memory. Interesting thing about Clink, they raised $52 million. They're based out of Detroit. And some really devious stuff. The CEO was a faculty member of the University of Michigan, and they used the University of Michigan's name to raise money in a way that was sort of improper from the start. And I mean, this guy had a lot of problems, but they're sort of the voice technology Theranos, is how I refer to them. And I refer to them as that before the CEO got removed. So you can imagine now. So I'm going to touch on a couple things here, and then I'll take whatever questions you got. So as you think about voice, hopefully this presentation has given you some new information. But as you consider how voice can impact and intersect with your mobile application, speed and convenience is obvious. I wrote it up there anyway, but it's obvious. So there's simply a lot of things that are easier to do by speaking them rather than touch tapping and swiping or whatever. And especially when you think about different contexts. If you're in the car, which is where most people use voice technology by far, way, the home is a distant number two. The car is way in the lead in terms of where voice technology is used the most. So if you have an app that is used in the car, like my brother does, he has an app called iExit, you have to sit there and think through use cases where it will be voice only. This is touching on the third bullet point there. Voice only use cases where if it's the driver using the technology, they need to keep their eyes affixed to the road, but they can speak. What does that interface look like? What do you have to think through there, as opposed to if they're in the passenger seat or if they're in an ability where they can take advantage of multimodal features, with graphics and screens. So you're almost having to create two apps, and that's the approach that we've seen be successful from a lot of folks. The other thing that's worth mentioning up here is sonic branding. So there's a whole industry that has exploded since Alexa came on the scene, and with voice experiences that have been in these millions and millions and millions of devices that people now have in their homes. The idea that not only does every company, every mobile app, every organization need its own physical go, it never changes unless you refresh it, over a decade or whatever. You need sonic branding that stays the same as well. And it's really fascinating if you start to get in the weeds on this. Things like the Intel advertising with the Pentium, the dun 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 dun. You hear certain things that you hear, and with no further explanation, you not only know what it is, that's the easy part, but you also associate some level of quality and competence with that same thing without even anyone saying anything. That's what's at the heart of sonic branding. And all of this stuff with voice and audio experiences, sonic branding is worth thinking about how it impacts your app, if it's worth having a little jingle at the beginning of your app, at the end, if that's something you can take advantage of. I have a book. I have 2 copies of the book here. I do not want to go back to Nashville with these. I'm going to give these to somebody, whether you like it or not. So this has been a hit. This book has. It was released a couple months ago, and it's all about Alexa skills that nobody knows exists. A solid 70 to 80% of people with Alexa devices, all they ever do is ask Alexa to play music, and Alexa, what's the weather? And every now and then you get fancy and say, Alexa, set me a timer or play a podcast, but this is a solid 70, 80%. And yet there are over 100,000 apps, or what they call Alexa skills, within the ecosystem. And that number is growing every day. So there's all sorts of cool stuff that it can do that nobody knows about. So this is me. You're welcome to reach out to me at any point, and I'm happy to take any questions you got.